Hi, I'm Katrina Currie with the All Overflowing in Love. We are a ministry that specializes in marriage. So we wanted to also focus on not only married people today, but the community because we believe marriage is a community and it impacts the community. But with so much going on, we want to discuss things that are happening to us individually, whether we're married or single, things that are happening in marriages, things are happening with young people, with those who are going to school, with our babies that are going to school and our babies that are having virtual learning. So those are the types of things. And of course, our not so babies, our adolescents and things of that nature. So we're going to cover a lot of material today. Since we are covering a lot of material, I want to stop and introduce our guest. Ramona Gurley. She is a registered nurse for 25 years who is also currently working in the psychiatric mental health nurse practitioner position where she sees children, adults in outpatient settings. Ramona founded a nonprofit RG, Mindful Health for Our Youth, Inc., as a way to give back to the community, particularly to the youth. She is also a published author and she is a certified life purpose coach. Ramona was born in Little Rock, Arkansas and moved to Mississippi in the military, which she served in 6 years active duty in the Air Force at Keesler Air Force Base here in Biloxi, Mississippi. She is a wife, mother of 4 children, 2 grandchildren, and expecting several grandchildren in the near future. We welcome today Ramona Girley. We certainly welcome Ramona today. Also, I have a co-host today, Deborah Quave. She's been a co-host with me on the All before. Deborah Quave is an author, a motivational and inspirational speaker. She hosts the Weekly Word every Wednesday at 8 p.m. Central Standard Time. She just received her certification from the Trauma Healing Institute, so she's ready to go on the path and journey of healing and walk people through that process. So we welcome her in this segment especially to help those to navigate those waters of healing themselves, giving them permission to heal themselves as well. So we welcome also Deborah C. Quave of the Weekly Word on Wednesdays. Hello, I am Katrina Currie of The All, and today I have my friend and co-host Deborah Quave. She's joining us, and of course, we've already introduced Ramona Gurley. So let's give a little bit tidbit. Deborah, can you give us a little bit about yourself? I know you're here in the Jackson County area, and that you also help in trauma and mental health.
Yes. Hi. Hi, everybody. Hi, The Oil. It's good to be back. Thanks for having me today, Katrina. As you guys know, I am a writer and a speaker, and I am recently certified through the Trauma Healing Institute to facilitate workshops around trauma and healing the generational wounds that we have incurred and helping people to heal from things in the past. So, yeah.
Welcome, welcome. And again, we welcome Ramona Gurley. She has a strong, as we said earlier, rich history in helping people in mental health concerns. And so today, I honestly, in all full transparency, I decided to reach out to Ramona because I was faced with some things recently, a death of a friend, the realization I have a couple of friends that are dealing with some terminal illnesses that are close to my heart, and just some things that happened earlier this year in COVID-19. And then when I started having conversations with other people who have been furloughed and laid off, retired, and a lot of uncertainty is around that. They're experiencing some anxiety or um, some things that's unsettling. And so I found myself in an unsettling place, and I got before the Lord and was praying. And so I sensed that this was the direction he wanted me to take the oil, not only for marriage, but single people and community. I know our focus is on marriage, but marriage is also a community. It's also family, and it also extends to the health of our community. So with that said, I'm going to jump into a few things that I want to touch bases on. These are just some points of discussion that we're going to share on this interview panel. With everything that is going on with racial tension, injustices, political conflict, loss of jobs, people being furloughed, and people who remain on their jobs and they still have to show up, Ramona. They still have to lean in, as some companies say. You need to lean in, whether the two people retired, one may be laid off, whatever the case may be, and that person has to show up, and they've dealt with political conflict, racial injustices, and things of that nature, and pandemic. And this, all of this is going on, and we're still required to lean in, show up, and navigate through some trauma. So how can people identify that they have been through some type of traumatic experience and seek the attention or help that they may need? Or if they just need to reassess some things, and perhaps they're reeling from trauma and may not be aware that they need to process these events that have happened. Can you kind of navigate us? I know that was a lot thrown at
That
you.
was, but okay. So first thing, you have to recognize or admit, that it is trauma. Because one thing some people try to do is not think about it. They just try to put it in the back of their head, or, they keep busy so they don't think about it. So as far as when you're saying, I'm gonna answer the one about when to know they need help first. They have to admit it and realize everybody handles trauma different. I mean, some people, do very well. They don't do anything. They can process it and go on, and some people can't. But the main thing to know when you need help is when it starts to interfere with the things you do daily, you know, your mood swings. If you're finding it hard to sleep, you're finding it hard to eat, you just isolating, being in your room, you don't want to be around people, you're crying all the time. So when it starts to get you to the point to where you can't function, you need help, to get some help.
Okay, so that's a telltale sign. You said different people process it differently. Doesn't mean that they hadn't gone through trauma,
Right,
but
right,
it means that they just process it differently.
right. And
So
that's the
go
I'm
ahead.
sorry. And that's the thing that bothers people, because they look at how other people are processing their
That's
trauma
exactly where
sometimes,
I was
and
going.
they think that just because this person is not crying, this person is not doing this, that they have to be the same way. And so the first thing, everybody, that's when I said everybody handles trauma different. So you have to kind of assess yourself and base it on your need and how you're functioning with it or dealing with it.
So marriage can be complex, as we all know already. Oftentimes, although people say, I'm seeing my pastor for counseling. And, I encourage that. I'm not saying that pastors are not equipped. We have a
Mhm.
lot of equipped pastors, and a lot of pastors who have been trained in trauma and different types of things. However, sometimes there are some pieces missing, like the medical piece, and some other counseling that pastors may not be accustomed to. Um, and so it will call for a cause to have professional license care, and it may need medical attention and both. So help walk us through that, how to identify when someone says, okay, my pastor is great, he's loving, he's caring, he's compassionate, but I need to seek some mental health counseling.
The number one way that I say to assess that, if you can't be 100% totally honest and open about your feelings and what you're going through, you're not talking to the right person, be it, you know, pastor, therapist, nurse practitioner, whoever, because in order for your therapy or you process it, you have to be able to be honest. And sometimes people find it difficult to talk to people they know or people that they're going to see on a daily basis because they don't want them to know, oh, I did this, or I did this, or I feel this way. They're embarrassed or they're ashamed. So sometimes it's hard to do counseling or therapy with people or pastors counseling because you have to see that person every day versus professional people. They hear it. We're bound by HIPAA. We can't talk about it. We can't, this, even if somebody call and ask about it, we can't say anything. So it just sets a different atmosphere when you're talking to someone or a medical professional. So that's the biggest thing. If you can't talk to that person and be 100% totally honest and open, and it does build up to that because all the time, even with a professional person, you don't go in there and just sometimes just lay everything out 100%.
Mm-hmm.
But at some point, you have to be able to say exactly how you feel. And if you're having some worries about, should I say this to this person, then you might need to get with someone else.
A question. Can I jump in here?
Oh, sure.
Okay. Thank you, Ramona, for your words and for painting some pictures. I wanted to come from a perspective of, because I remember when I was living in Boston and I was living alone in a studio apartment and I was going through some things physically and having some side effects of some medicine that I didn't know until like months later, that I was having like suicidal ideations, hair falling out, depression, just like a lot of things that I didn't necessarily pick up on until like it was all like it was beyond a point. And so I remember when I went to go get my hair cut and the lady, when she was evening it up, because it was like spotty and patchy from the medicine. And the lady, as soon as she started doing my hair, she was like, do you have are you taking medicine? And I said, I was. Why? And she was like, oh, because I was about to tell you that the medicine is making your hair fall out. Oh, she was like, and so it was really weird for me. And I was like, why? How did you know that? And she was like, oh, just based on the pattern, the texture. And she was like, you must live alone. And I said, oh, I do. Why? And she was like, oh, because if you lived, I was kind of sharing with her the story, and then she was like, oh, you must live alone. And I was like, yeah. She said, because if you didn't, somebody would have picked up, like if you lived with somebody else, even if it wasn't like a partner, somebody would have picked up on your pattern, your behavior changes, so you could have caught that earlier. So I said all that to say, and I know that's not a rule, but that was just something that I had never thought about, that for someone who is single and who may be going through some of the things, because something that you said that kind of stuck out to me was like the pattern changes, or like if you're not able to function with the trauma, but you don't necessarily know that you're not, this is associated with any trauma, if you're alone a lot or if you're sleeping a lot, or which may not seem like a lot when you're in it, because sometimes when you're in it, it just is what you're doing to survive, but you don't even know outside, like you can't see yourself outside of your body, So I guess that long thing to say, what do you say to that? And then also, do you have any thoughts around what someone who maybe lives by themselves can do to pick up on the behavior changes first, or even accurately assess, like, is this just I'm tired, or am I in the space where I'm needing to get help?
Okay.
Does that make
It
sense?
does. Because what I tell my patients if I start them on a new medicine, I tell them before your follow-up appointment, ask whoever's around you, can they tell a difference in you? Have I changed? Is there anything? So, and I use that as part of my basis to say, is the medication working or is it not working? I said, you don't have to tell them that you're taking medicine. Just say, have I changed? Do you think I've changed the last couple of weeks? But a lot of times it's just like you say, we normalize it. So it becomes a normal because we are using coping mechanisms and because we're still functioning, we don't think it's trauma. Or we don't think that we haven't processed with it because we're still functioning. But a good way to judge that if you're by yourself is to ask someone, even a coworker or, a family member, somebody you may talk to, have I changed? Or notice, are you calling people the same amount? Are you talking to people the same amount? And how are you talking to them? But the best way, if you're alone, is to ask someone who sees you often.
Oh, that's good to actually ask. Which requires a vulnerability, because it's like
It
inviting
does.
someone in to say, like, ask a question, and then you have to, yeah.
But, you know, that's kind of all you'll have to go by, if especially if
Mm-hmm.
you.
Oh yeah, I'm all for being vulnerable. I'm just for anybody watching is like, yeah, that's, you know, it's
And that's
another
what I
layer.
said. Yeah, you don't have to give them all the information. You can, just ask a coworker, I don't know. Do you think I've changed last month? I'm kind of feeling, what do you think? And most of the time, depending on who you ask, you usually know who to ask. Sometimes they give you information you don't want to know. You're like,
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
go ahead, Katrina. I'm sorry.
So I want to share something similar to Deborah's experience. And I'm not sure if this is quote unquote trauma, but my sister and I share custody with my mom, and I had a lot going on, and my husband just picked up on, he said, I want you to shut everything down. I had this list of things that I needed to do. He gave me a ticket, a couple of places to go for massages, and he just told me, you, even if you have to get a hotel room for 2 days, you go enjoy yourself. I want you to just nothing, just shut it down, just take time for you. And I found myself in the massage, when I was getting the massage, just started crying. And the lady was like, the lady and the guy was like, is everything okay? And I said, I'm perfectly fine. It's just that I did not know how much I needed the time. And I was so grateful that he was, and I shared this story before, I was so grateful that he was able to pick up that I needed that time and space. And he said, go to your favorite restaurant. And I was like, you don't want to be with me? He was like, no, it's not. You need to just be attentive to you. And he said, if you need me for anything, I'll be there. Of course, if you want me to come, because he was talking about hotel rooms and stuff like that. He said, but I really want you to not be obligated to anything. And so
And
that
that's
I
a,
was so grateful. And so that was my point. When you don't even know that you need a
mhm.
break, I didn't even realize, because he said, you've been doing and doing for everybody else. You need just time for you. So yeah.
Or another indicator, sometimes when you ever had it when you're in some type of mood or something and you're somewhere and someone said, what's wrong with you? Or you okay? So if you're getting it all the time, you might need to say, okay, well, quite a few people asking me, am I okay? And are you all right? Maybe I need to assess some things, because a lot of times we don't realize that our mood is showing, but our
Yeah,
mood shows.
Mhm.
And so
yeah,
people can pick up on, when you're sad, are you okay today? And if you're getting that quite often every day, someone asking you or different people asking you, then that could also be an indication, that maybe I need to talk to someone. Maybe I got some things going on I need to deal with.
Yeah,
yeah,
like you're shoulder and shoulder and shoulder, and you'll let the weights keep coming. And he said, no, just, and then from that point, Deborah and I had a conversation. I think sometime after that is having that ability to just really talk to people and say, no, I cannot add any more on my plate.
Mhm.
So yeah.
one of the things that I, because if you're thinking about, you're saying, because I think you said the title is permission to heal and giving yourself permission, and we're
Yeah.
talking about acknowledging the trauma or acknowledging. Ramona, if you can, I didn't Google it, but I was just in your clinical work. How do you guys define trauma?
Trauma is anything that has happened to you that has caused you some type of pain, some type of harm, has affected your life in a negative way. You
Mm-hmm.
know, people think that it has to be something big, but it could be
Yeah,
just verbal abuse. It could be just somebody just verbally abusing you day in and day out. That's trauma.
Mhm.
And so people
yeah,
think that it has to be this big old thing, but if it's something that's happening to you, and I say negative, but I mean any way that makes you feel down, depressed, any way that doesn't make you feel good, then that could be a trauma, possibly.
yeah. No, I wanted to highlight that because that's something that I am recently learning within the last, I would say, 2 years. I used to have this friend who always used the word trauma, like, oh, that's so, and I would be like, oh my God, like I would hate to hear her say traumatized, like, oh, that's so traumatized. And it caused me so much trauma. And I would be like, oh my gosh, she's so dramatic. But I had to start understanding when I started really understanding what the word trauma meant and realizing that I have been traumatized in a lot of ways in certain areas. And now that I'm in this healing, I started this process called inner healing back in May. And so through that, I've been really learning and identifying areas like, oh, the reason you respond this way, or the reason this is so like, like that's your trauma speaking, but I didn't know how to hear the trauma. So I think one for anybody, like, I guess, speak to someone who may not even be aware that trauma is something that they should associate with or learn more about because they could, because I used to think traumatized meant from molestations and rape or somebody died, it's like the huge things, but not realizing that, no, I'm traumatized by the way this human treated me.
That's a problem, big problem with mental health. All the mental health words I say have become desensitized. Oh, you're so crazy. Oh, I'm so, the words that they use, people who really have mental health issues, they are offended by that, or it's a different meaning, because you so crazy can mean a lot of different things to a lot of different people. And so because the words are, or we have made fun of it, in the movies and the things that we speak, especially African Americans, we some of us,
everybody got a crazy uncle, and
right. So it's normalized to where it's like, oh yeah, that's just like you said, that's just crazy uncle, just ignore it. He okay, and it becomes desensitizes. So when people have problems, they think that is, oh, it's okay, it's not that big of a deal. I'll just get over it. And sometimes people do tell you that, oh, you just need to get over it, or they think it's just easy to tell you to snap out of it, but not always that easy to go through or process some things, because trauma, even like I said, something is verbal abuse. Verbal abuse is one of the biggest traumatic thing that people ignore.
Yeah. And don't even know to look at. And especially in the workplace, like Katrina, you're talking about the workplace, like, and think about 2020 and the fact that some people are going through the traumas of losing people, losing jobs, but also the trauma of still having a job, but being expected to put out and all these other things. Like that's traumatizing because you can't even like deal with yourself. So
that's what I was saying. Some people have lost loved ones, had COVID, had trauma after trauma. And then, someone in their group may have gotten retired, furloughed, whatever, and they have to still show up, lean in, come to the expectancy of excellence, even though they hadn't even dealt with themselves yet. And so I've seen that from various places and various situations.
And look at America as a whole. COVID is looked at totally different from a bunch of different people. We get all the time. Some people take it serious, some people don't. Some people have lost people, some people don't. So just the understanding and looking at that aspect is, totally different. And everybody process the idea or the realization of COVID different. It is a trauma to some people.
Yes.
But some people, they feel like it's not a big deal.
Right.
Yeah.
So
it's the aspects too, because it's because there's the physical parts of, but it's like the parts of having to wear masks all the time. I had to acknowledge back very early on. For me, I was joking, like, 'cause I always say I have fake asthma, I have exercise-induced asthma, so like I forget that I have it unless I'm in a situation and I'm like having to take my pump. But like this year, I've had to take my pump so much because of the mask. So for me, that's been very like, it's like I'm like, people are like, I'm always like an out person. I'm like, well, why? I'm like, no, I really am not trying to be around places because it's traumatizing to have on the mask to me. Like I can't breathe. So like even that was something that I think is acknowledging that, just acknowledging the truth of where you are and being okay. I think that is something that people deal with a lot, is when you start seeing, like, because I know we've been talking about, okay, my mood may be shifting or something may be changing. But then when you start noticing that, giving yourself permission to be in that space where I'm not responding like everybody else. Like some people can go and like wear their mask wherever, or some people can bounce back. And for me, that's something like even really making me think like, okay, I feel like I am somebody who like I adapt. My adaptability level is very, very high. But then I was just telling a friend right before we got on, like, man, I think I'm done. Like, I feel like I'm done with, like, I can't adapt no more. I can't adjust. I'm tired. Like, and she was like, but you've done like, you have to give yourself credit for the whole year. Like, okay, this may be like the last 8 weeks of this year. You can't do nothing else, or and I think that we have to be compassionate around the conversation of trauma, especially when it's yourself, when you're trying to, because we can show others compassion, but sometimes we don't do that for ourselves.
Right. That's true too. Sometimes we give grace to so many other people and then kind of harbor or beat up ourselves. So yeah, that's a good look.
And it comes back, yes, to that self-love. And so many times we give other people, or we tell other people so many things, but when we look in the mirror, we don't tell ourselves.
Yeah.
We can uplift, encourage somebody, but then we're so hard on ourselves. And that's a whole different discussion
Ramona,
on when we get to talk about backgrounds on how to do that.
Ramona,
But
that is so powerful. So that's another part of healing, giving ourselves permission to heal, that we can take the permission, just like we grace everybody else, just like we encourage everybody else, just like we try to influence other people and uplift their spirits, to do that for ourselves. So
but
having that permission to heal as well in that area.
I have found that it is, people don't know truly what self-love is or how to love themselves because they never have. So, it's bigger than, just going to take a 20-minute bath for one day. You
Mm-hmm.
know, it is, so when you ask people, well, what do you say to yourself? What do you tell yourself?
I was about to
Are
say.
you telling what, how in your head when you're thinking, are you thinking, oh, I'm so stupid. Oh, I can't do this. Or that's part of self-love. What do the things that you tell yourself, do you stop? And we do have to make ourselves stop, especially with entrepreneur business women. We do have to stop because we wear so many hats and we're steady going, this needs to be done. This needs to be done. And we don't stop and take that break. But I have learned that I have to schedule, even in my schedule, I have to schedule some time for me.
Mm-hmm.
And sometimes we just have to do that. We don't know how to stop, but we have to start learning. I started with, okay, I need to make sure 30 minutes in the day, I do something for me, be it read a book, be it just listen
Mm.
to music, be it, and you have to schedule and make yourself do it because it's not something that comes naturally to most of us
Mm-hmm.
to just live on
Yeah.
ourselves.
I've been someone who, forgive me, I feel like really emotional. I feel like it was like this is a whole like calling me in because I've been really hard on myself lately. So as you're saying this, I'm like thinking about the things I've been saying to myself because I have been in a space of like just not feeling like I'm gonna get put in the output that I think I should have. But that is so important even because I'm somebody who like I've practiced self-love and I've practiced like learning to be good at it. But I think it's super important to make sure that you are assessing that, where you are, even if you call yourself somebody who is like really good at self-love or you prioritize like yourself, like, are you still prioritizing that? And because have been a lot of hits and like this it is a very crazy time. And so, just to really reevaluate and make sure that, anybody who's listening or watching on the playback, that you take some time to really assess where you are and where you are on the self-love scale. Acknowledging, when we say I acknowledge the traumas, like identify, write down some of the things that have happened in this year and like one by one, how have you processed that? Have you processed that? And don't, you're not grading yourself on a scale. It's just to know, like taking note of where you are and where you've been. And then that kind of give you a gauge of some of the work that needs to be done. You don't have to choose to do it, but if you want to do that, if you want to, I think it's good to see it written down.
Right. And that's because you have to know where you are. Other than that, you're just all over the place.
Right.
It's just mumble jumble all over the place. And then it's a turmoil because you have no idea where you are, and it's like, okay, let me do this. No, let me do that. Let me jump over here. Let me do that. So I journal, and I do, tell people to journal and write it down, because it gives you something to look at and assess, and you can really day by day see where you're at.
Yeah.
And what are you doing in your thoughts? And I tell people, sometimes you don't have to read it, just write it down.
Mhm.
If you just get it out, because if you get it out, most of the time you feel better. And some people don't like to talk, and I say, write it down. Just write whatever you're thinking, write it down. If you don't want to read it, don't read it, but come back later and look at it, and then assess yourself and see where you are and how you're doing.
Yeah. Record it too. If you're not a writer, you can record it. You have the voice memo, make notes, all different things. But yeah.
Technology, I'm still learning this technology stuff, but
Oh, what
yeah,
you saying?
I'm just getting better with technology stuff. Yes, but
Oh. Oh yeah. The millennials, people like, I'm not writing nothing. I'm a writer, so I'm always
yeah,
journaling.
so I forget that all the time, and my kids like, Mama, we don't write these days, but yeah.
And I have a thing where I try to hold those things captive. My one of my favorite scriptures is casting down imaginations and every high thing that exalts itself against the knowledge of God, bringing every thought to the obedience of Christ. And so sometimes when I have those things that are not self-loving, you don't look like this, and you need to do this, and just being negative towards myself, I say, okay, that's a thought that I'm going to take captive, and and especially if it's not constructive, it's not a God ordained thought. And so I'll bring that thought into captivity, and I say, well, that's a lie, because God created me this way, and he empowered me to be this, and this is, I'm his daughter. And I begin to turn that thing around. And I find those days that I'm lazy and I don't capture those thoughts, they can start lingering and piling up. And so I immediately become aware and say, we're not having that today. And
Right.
so it is very important that we are attentive to how we talk to each other and love. And there is a scripture for that. And then there's also help, like Ramona Gurley, if you need to seek that type of help as well.
And it's something you have to teach yourself to do,
Practice.
because we have taught ourselves to be hard on ourselves or to say negative
Yeah.
things for so long, because sometimes people tell you, oh, you're just being arrogant. Oh, you're just being this. So a lot of times we downplay some of our inward feelings because we have been taught that it's not okay.
Yeah.
And so we have to go back and learn. So what I always suggest, or one of the things I suggest to my patients, is for when you find yourself doing a negative thoughts, it's called thought stopping, thought block, stop,
Mm-hmm.
and write down something good. Just make yourself stop. Just say, even if you say it out loud, stop and write down something good, and keep writing down something good until you're no longer thinking about the negative thought. Because a lot of times it could be one negative thought we have, and we have 10 good thoughts or 10 good things that have happened to us. But
Mm-hmm.
we let this one negative thing,
Yeah.
one negative thought ruin our whole day, mood. And it's all about the gratitude and the gratefulness. But we have to make a conscious effort to stop ourselves. And some people even have I told them to use a rubber band. And you start thinking a negative thing, pop the rubber band to bring yourself, to
Mm-hmm.
To be in the
stop.
present,
Yeah.
to like
Yeah,
be present
stop.
too. Yeah.
Whatever, just find something that can help you stop that thought and stop it from growing, because we take one thought and it'll grow and grow and grow.
And that's
And
going to be your harvest. Whatever you plant
right,
and water,
right,
whatever you fertilize, that's going to grow. So we, of
absolutely.
course, I'm sorry for interrupting. Go ahead.
No, no, no. I was agreeing with you. You're absolutely right. But
Yeah, I was thinking about it, like, because thanks for even sharing that, because I was going to ask you, Katrina, but Ramona, you just made that clear. Like, I'm always big on what does it look like, give me what it looks like. But when you said taking the thoughts captive, I was going to ask, what does that look like to paint a picture for somebody, that so it doesn't look abstract. But I think that that's really good, is like the thought, like whatever you need to do, like creating a strategy. Is that what I'm hearing? Like to create some type of strategy that when you find yourself being aware of your negative things, that's something that you do to redirect yourself. Is that right?
Yes.
Yeah.
And another big thing I want to bring up before I forget, because I got this old brain, it's forgiveness. A lot of time people can heal through trauma because of forgiveness, especially forgiving themselves.
Yes,
And
so
sometimes we hold ourselves accountable for things that we had no control over. And then, and even in that, we still have to forgive. Now, it's controversial, but forgiveness is not for that other person. It is for
it's for
you. A lot of
yourself.
people don't
Yeah.
believe that, but it is. And part of the healing is forgiving that other person. And a lot of people, I can't do that. Oh no, Miss
Can
Ramona,
I ask you
I
this?
am not going to do that. But it is
I
part
am
of the healing process.
okay. I'm
Go ahead.
huge on forgiving. I'm huge on it. It does for you. One of the things I have been trying to talk to some people about, just because you forgive, and we always want to see if we can restoration, if we can. But if there cannot be a restoration, that doesn't mean that you hadn't forgiven.
Right,
Um,
right.
yeah,
Yeah. You can
that's the
forgive a
part.
person. That doesn't mean you have to go and talk to them.
Yeah.
That
Forgiveness
just
isn't
means you're not,
reconciliation. Yeah.
right. That just means that you're not in your head
Mhm.
harboring this,
Putting
hatred or
them in
negative
jail and
feelings
putting them
or
in your
these
mental jail.
negative
Yeah.
thoughts because you're just, any type of negativity, just like you said, it grows.
Mhm.
So you want to get all that out. So forgiving, you can forgive somebody and never talk to them again.
Right. Right.
Because it is for you. Like I love
Right.
the one of the things that we talked about in the restoration. That's the word we just said. What's the and the course that I just did, the
Trauma.
Trauma Healing Institute. Yeah, the Trauma Healing Institute. I actually posed that question the night when we talked about, or the class where we talked about forgiveness. Actually, and that part of the healing process. I posted it on my Facebook and I just did a poll of what's the hardest part of unforgiveness. And a lot of people responded. And the thing that people responded was about letting go, and the concept of like if the person never that the person doesn't have to be a part of that process. And it's so difficult to see that because we think I know I can only forgive you if you do this. But like forgiveness is not, it's the act that is solo dolo. Like it is our job to do it and it's not the other person's business. And it's our work to do. And so it is very hard, but I would even argue that it's not just a part of the healing process. I think it's the foundation of the healing process because you're never fully able to, it's like continuing to put makeup or bandage something that has never had surgery, something that needed surgery, but you just keep moving on and doing physical therapy, but you're not actually being healed from the inside out. That's my perspective, but I'm no medical doctor at all.
Oh no, that's the truth because it's amazing how many people I'll see in there. Because I see people from age 3 to infinity.
Mhm.
But it's amazing how many people I'll see at 30 and 40 years. They're still haven't let go of things that happened when they were 10
Yeah.
or 9. I mean, and they've been thinking about it all these years and it has grown and has grown. And, then it affects your relationships with other people on your job because whenever, you might see somebody or something that brings up
A
this
trigger.
feeling,
Yeah.
yeah, a trigger, then you could possibly lash out or you can't give yourself completely or it affects so many things. So you're definitely right, Deborah, about the foundation because it affects everything, your mood, the way you look at things, the way you talk to people, the way you look at yourself.
Yeah.
It affects everything.
Yeah, that biggest piece too is forgiving yourself. This was literally my last week in my coaching session. It was forgiveness came back up and I'm like, now look, I done forgave some people. Now look, I'm like, tired of doing, like, I'm tired now. Who is it? Like what? And it was like me. It was me, like for either holding on to something too long or not being where I thought I should be or like all these things. So we think about the concept of trauma, we're re-traumatizing ourselves all by not forgiving, because we're continuing to loop that pain, loop whatever it is on that replay, and we're emotionally experiencing, even if we're not presently experiencing whatever it is. So I think it is super important to like start looking at that. And if no year has taught us like that it's important to do some work, is I think is this year, because there's been so much physical pain that I think like so much physical pain, but then people have had to like be in their homes with spouses that they don't like, be in homes with kids that they don't like, be in them homes with themselves that they don't like. So you know what I mean? There's a lot of not liking happening, and people are like it really starts with ourselves. It's really starting to have that conversation and really starting to identify, where do I want to be? What has happened? And how do I not continue to repeat these cycles, even when I don't know that I'm repeating it? And what I'm learning about forgiveness is that that is a part of what keeps you in a repetitive cycle, even when you think that, like, if you're thinking you're doing the work of healing, in which you are doing parts of it, but until you get that full forgiveness, can you break that cycle of like, yeah.
Mm-hmm. And you're right. I have can't tell you how my patient load has increased since
I
COVID.
was going to ask you that. I was going to ask that.
Yes, I mean people, that haven't new patients and patients that they got off their medicine, now they're coming back like, okay, I need my medicine back, especially when the kids stay home. So when I had so many parents, it's like, okay, I understand what my teacher's talking about. The teachers are saying with it. So it is, you're right. And for me personally, one of the things I had to deal with, I'm a people's person. I'm outgoing. I like to go. When we first started COVID, I was that staying in the house, everything was closed. Man, I was starting to get depressed myself, because it's like, I need some interaction with people. Nothing was open day in and day out in the house. I wasn't used to that. And so I had to relearn to do things and relearn to say, you know what? I don't have to be busy all the time. I don't have to be around people all the time. But for so long, I mean, there never was a time, I can't think of a time when I was that to the point where I just had to stay in the house like nothing was open. I remember when that was going on, and that was tough for me.
Yeah.
I was like, man, I need to go out and do something, but there was nowhere to go.
Right.
It's so interesting because what'd you say?
Curfews and everything. Yeah.
Yeah. It's interesting because I'm like the reverse. Like during that time, I was the most peaceful. I have more anxiety with, like, today I was out in the store and I was like, oh my God, like I'm never in the store. So it's like, I was like, man, I want to go. And I always say that, I'm like, I want to go back. But that also relates to some things that probably needs to be talked about. I could talk to you later because I'm probably running from something. Like, it's probably something that needs to be taken a look at.
Perfect example, how we were saying, everybody's ideas and way we deal with things are totally different.
Yeah. It is. It is.
So Ramona, I have a question about forgiving yourself. This is kind of a twist on a lot of things we hear. People have unrealistic expectations, and that's why they're let down and so forth and so on. But I've also dealt on the flip side of that with, it's okay that you had realistic expectations and you had some disappointments, but forgiving yourself, it's okay to be that child who felt like their parents should have protected them.
Right.
That's a realistic expectation. But, for someone to tell that child that that was an unrealistic expectation, I think that's, or who is now an adult. You would believe if you went to your mom and said, I'm being molested by your boyfriend, that it would be a realistic expectation for her to support you and to help you. It would be a realistic expectation that a husband expects his wife to be faithful and vice versa. Um, so sometimes I hear a lot of times in the medical community and in church and you had an unrealistic expectation, but the backlash of that is I had someone that talked to me and wanted some counseling. She was like, I feel so stupid. And I said, forgive yourself and give yourself permission to heal that you were being a good wife
Mhm.
and that you wanted your marriage to work. You did the part that you wanted your marriage to work. So that this concept of always saying it's an unrealistic expectation is something that I wanted to address and have that person to forgive themselves for being trusted in their, whether it's their marriage or whether it was their family or dad that abandoned them and so forth and so on. Can you share?
So yeah, so it's a couple of different approaches for that. So the first one is when sometimes the unrealistic expectation is that we expect people to treat us how we treat them.
Right.
And we can't control that. That's an
Right.
unrealistic expectation. We can't control what people say to us, what people do to us. So we have to be who we are because that's genuinely us, but we have to learn to also accept that some people or a lot of people are not going to treat us the way we treat them. Another aspect of that I deal with a lot, especially because I do talk to a lot of people who have been raped, molested, things that happen in their childhood, and they blame, fault their parents, and I have to point out that a unrealistic expectation is you can't go back and unchange that. You
Right.
still have to stay in the present. Sometimes parents do the best that they can with what they have. You and in every situation, sometimes history repeats itself, the generational curses, the whole thing.
Yeah,
But
you don't know if your parent was molested and their parent reacted that way and they
right,
kept it tight and she wouldn't even release that information to you when it happened to you. I talk about that as well. Go ahead. I'm sorry. Go ahead.
so it's okay. So sometimes, a lot of times, I tell them they need to say what they need to say to that person and let it release them. You know, I
What does
see
releasing look like?
as letting it go, not holding on to those feelings, not keep blaming your
Forgiveness.
mama. If my mama
Forgiveness.
would have, if my dad, and because especially with rape and molestation with children, and that's one of the hardest things because they do feel like as a mother, as a they should have been protected more, but it goes back to staying in the present and doing what you need to do to heal yourself because you can't go back and undo what happened in the past. You can't go back and a lot of times we don't know what happened in that situation, so you have to face it. And sometimes I say if you can't talk to that person, write a letter.
Hmm.
Give it to them, or if you want to give it to them, you can, but get it out some kind of way or talk about it in therapy. But the main thing is getting it out and saying that you forgive the person, and even the person, here we go, even the person that did the harm,
Yes.
which is hard.
Yes.
But as long as you harbor that in your heart and mind, it's going to keep the negativity going. And I tell everybody, there's always a why. And sometimes everybody want to know the why, and sometimes you just have to accept the fact that you will never understand the why.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
And
Yeah.
depending on your religious belief or your faith, you know I believe everything happens for a reason. I believe if it was meant to be, it's meant to be. Everybody don't believe that, but whatever the why is that you know it happened. There's nothing you can do to go back and change it.
Yeah.
Have to face it and stay in the present.
I have a question. Is it okay to looking up time and trying to figure out? Okay, so I have two questions actually. So I'm just gonna ask, and then
Okay.
I'll ask one and what's just or whatever. So first, I like what you did there with the unrealistic expectations. It's off the top of your head. Do you have like a list that you can kind of shoot out or just of some unrealistic expectations that you come across often that people are that are kind of common?
The number one she
So
said to me was believing that
yeah,
people want to treat you like
Oh
you.
yeah, I like that one. That's why I
That
wanted to
was
get some
good.
more. Yeah, I
I
like that
could,
one.
I
Yeah,
could
yeah,
throw up now.
yeah.
She
another
freed
one
me.
is infidelity.
I'm sorry.
Infidelity, cheating. I hear that a lot. Oh, I gave him, I was this or I was that, and he turned out and he did this. And so, and now they expect, they want to stay together, but they have all these, they don't want to put the trust. So they have all these rules, guidelines, and expectations that they now want the person to do so we can stay together. And it's like, okay, if you're going to stay with this person, you're going to have to build the trust. And,
That's
and
right.
if you know, you can't expect them not to cheat again. You can't expect them to cheat again. You just have to decide, are you going to stay
Mm-hmm.
and rebuild the trust, or are you not? And you have to let it go. It would back to that forgiveness
Right.
and let it go. But the
Yeah.
unrealistic expectation is, you know, I want him to call me when he get to work. I'm just throwing stuff out here. I want
Yeah,
him
yeah,
to
yeah.
call me when he get
Mm-hmm.
home. I want all his passwords. I want all. And most of the time, most people don't.
It's like
People.
dehuman. Yeah.
Yeah, and it's all their work is like, yeah. Do you really want to go that? Another one is kids. Um, we raise our kids to the best of our ability, and you could be the best parent, but that doesn't mean your child's going to make the best decisions.
Mm,
And a lot of time, parents think, oh, I raised them in church. I gave them, this. I gave them that. They didn't want to have this. I can't believe they're out here thugging in the streets. I can't believe they're out here stealing. I can't believe they're smoking weed. I can't believe. And it's like, with technology and the things that kids are exposed to, we raise our kids to the best of the ability, but we can't always say that they're not going to.
yeah.
Right.
So I get that a lot with the parents that, yes, we hope
Mm-hmm.
and expect, but a lot of times, I ain't gonna say a lot of times, but sometimes they don't do
Mm-hmm.
what we taught them.
What about for single people? Because like, what's a real expectation that you see from your single? Because I guess I'm sitting as the single person here, like speaking
Okay.
for the singles.
Well, one is in the whole thing, they assume that marriage is going to make them whole.
Mm-hmm.
Marriage is going to make them better. All I need to do, if I was married or I want to be, it's like marriage doesn't make you whole. So you're expecting just because if you're married that everything is going to be okay in your life. Because you can still be married, still be married and struggling because, different reasons. So that expectation of marriage makes them whole.
Yeah. Go ahead.
Another expectation is the longevity of the relationship. Sometimes I get a lot of women who put a time length. He should have been asking me to marry him by now.
Mm,
Or I do this and I do that, and there is no gauge or nothing to say that a man should marry you by 2 years, or if you do this or if you do that. So that's two of the biggest things that I hear my single women.
yeah. I like that you said because the whole part, but then I think whole and better are two different things because I hear both of them. And then that's something that I have to, I don't necessarily feel more like, oh, I'm going to be whole, but I do have to find I was actually having a conversation with one of my married friends earlier about that. Like I have to check myself from thinking that, oh, my life will be better when I'm married. Like, and it's like, no, I have a good life right now. Like my life now is great. And so there's like a disconnect sometimes. But in social media, I think social media plays a huge part because people be posting these pictures all over everywhere for hiring their photographers, and you get lost in that highlight reel. And I think people only share, or a lot of times they share only the great things and don't have so I do think that there's a disconnect between what the reality of marriage like it's still life. It's just another component of life. It's not like, oh, you go sleep, wake up, and it's like it's like not like this magical fantasy world. Like a lot of people say, like marriage is not the reward. I really love that. It's not a reward for something. It's like just another facet of life. And I think for me, that's something that I've learned on my journey. And I like to speak to singles to kind of just put that like gentle reminder out there, like nothing is wrong with you. And you're like, you are where you are right now is good. Like call that good and see the good in that.
And a lot of times too, I mean, think about with girls, we grow up thinking that's, you get married, you have kids.
That's the end goal.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, you have kids. Yeah,
you married, you have kids. So when they're not married, it's like, what's wrong with me?
Mm-hmm. Yeah,
because we have heard that, or we have trained our girls. I mean, maybe not personally, but even like you say in the world, when you see things, you get married, you have kids, you wear the white dress, you have this. So sometimes it's not the reality of marriage itself. It's this image.
The image, exactly.
That we have that, of marriage or getting married or having the white dress. And,
I was about to say, sometimes it's even the process, the fantasy of, and we see it all the time, especially in counseling. All three of us do some form of counseling. They're excited about the dress, and I'm like, but let's talk about what you all need to talk about, like, because after the wedding, there's going to be a true marriage, a true live-in. There's going to be some true exchanges. Let's talk about that. But they're caught up in the ring, the lashes, the veil, the dress, the decor, and all of this. And I'm like, no, we need to put this into perspective. And so you were right when you brought up they're caught up in the dress in the process, but the image or the ideal, and not looking at the long term of this is a lasting commitment.
And another thing is how in society,
mm-hmm.
I mean, people to ask you, you're not married, you're 35, what's wrong with you?
Whoa, hold up, Ramona, hold up. Cutting it close, you're cutting it close there. Now I'm talking about me, cutting it close.
But they say, you don't have no kids, what's wrong with you? And people have to realize everybody doesn't want to be married. So just like you said, some people that's 35 and not married, they're okay with that. I have a good life. I'm happy where I'm at. If it happens, it happens. If it doesn't, but when some people here we go again. Depends on how strong of a person you are and what you grew up. If you're constantly hearing somebody ask you, why you not married? Why you not having kids? You start to think that.
Yeah.
You start, well, maybe I should be married. Maybe something is wrong with me. I haven't kept a boyfriend over a year. Just all kind of crazy stuff. We start to people plant that in our head of what we should have instead of looking at, like you said, look at my life and say, is this what I want?
Yeah. That's super important because I really want to kind of stay here for 1 second if we can, because even when thinking about trauma, because I'm like partnering with a couple of conversations I've had today, especially with the millennial generation, is that there's the whole thing around Black love, and it's like always like celebrated to be in a relationship, that it can be traumatizing to feel like, just from society's pressures or from the things that we're not even aware, that every time I get on social media and I see yet again somebody has posted, like people that it's one thing to see it from afar and it's like celebrities or whatever, but like now everybody, like everything is like everybody got everybody's basic family photos look like some celebrity did them and like get ready, so it's like it can be so overwhelming. And I just want to really speak, because 2020 has been especially difficult on singles. And that's something I've kind of been very sensitive to, that concept, but also Yeah. But it hasn't. Like I've had a lot of conversations with different people, and just the emotions that aren't really talked about on the forefront of like not. We've been talking about it from the perspective, and I mean like kind of from a general perspective of just like people who are isolated to themselves or like who have been in isolation by themselves. But then there's the component of people who are actually single who thought like, oh, this is going to be the year. You know, every night everybody has like, this is the year I'm going to like whatever, and who haven't been able to date and who haven't been able to like get out in a certain way. And I think that I really want to talk to Ramona if you can, just someone who's dealing with those and haven't even necessarily maybe even acknowledged how you felt. Cause I had to acknowledge that like, whoa, I was feeling a certain way, like kind of almost like, wait a minute, I'm gonna go a whole year and like not even because I'm not gonna meet none of you people in COVID. Like I don't want to meet you. Like so it's like, what does that look like? You know? So I guess just kind of talk through that.
Okay, so I have seen people who are traumatized or depressed because now we glamorize everything. I mean, I've heard
Mm-hmm.
so many photo shoots, 6 months, the pre-wedding, the wedding engagement photos, and I mean there's like steps and there's big parties,
Yeah.
the big gender reveal, and it is exciting, and we do see a lot of it, and so you do get caught up in, oh well, kind of like a, when I do that, oh that's nice, and so we see more of that, and it's more and more. So I had people this year, they had to cancel their weddings, they had to cancel
Mm-hmm.
plans. Oh, and it was hard on them because they had these big plans and they had these ideas, and then it was like, somebody said, "Oh, which you guys want to get married? Just go ahead and get married." And it was like,
Yeah.
"Oh, I can't. No, we just can't go to the courthouse. You don't understand. You know, I wanted this. I've already. I mean, it was. I mean, it was traumatizing
Hmm.
to people because how COVID affected
Right.
just the whole thought of the single and getting married. So another thing is with singles on, you know, dating and going out, we here we go. We back to that isolation.
Yes.
We're back to, if you're single and you don't have anybody, you're by yourself.
Right.
So, and you're not going to work maybe, or you're going to work and you're not around people. So you're feeling alone. You're feeling like, oh, if I was married, oh, if I heard that if this was a time I wish I wasn't married. I wish I wasn't single. I
Right.
wish I was married because this has been hard because I
Yeah.
just house by myself. So it's, trying to keep it in a general sense is, yeah, all of that has affects people different ways. But those are some ways that I've been hearing from, the COVID and the
Mm-hmm.
aspect, especially with that not being able to have their, you know, dream wedding, or even with some of the pregnancies, they
Yeah.
wasn't able to have the gender reveal. They wasn't able to have their baby shower.
Hmm.
My son and my niece dealt with it because they wasn't able to, have the traditional graduation. They were seniors.
Hmm.
You
Myself.
know, my niece, she cried for a few days. She had prom dress, you know,
Um,
and she was excited. They didn't get their yearbook signed. They didn't get to say goodbye to their friends. Graduation. We got 3 tickets. They had to decide
mhm.
who was coming to graduation. Then they had family members mad because they wasn't picked of the three.
Right.
And I mean, like mad, acting crazy with them
Right.
mad. So that put more depression and making the people, kids feel down, or the parents, because now, and so yeah, COVID in
Yeah.
2020, and,
It's been a lot. So what are you saying? Because I know, what are you saying, or what are some of the things that you maybe advice or tips that you're giving to people to cope and to like, so somebody's listening who are like, yep, I fall in that category, I fall in that category. Like, what are some takeaways that someone can like think like, okay, maybe I can start doing this?
you have to stay in the present because
Mm-hmm.
that's where we are.
Yeah.
We
That's real
can't,
talk.
you can't, that's the first thing. You have to stay in the present. And then the second is back to that, gratitude or thankfulness. And we have to be thankful for what we have, where we are, you know, and that's different for everybody. You know, my job, I still go to work. I don't see patients, but I do it over the phone. But some people could work. And I know during that time, at one point in time, you know, when the unemployment was really good, you know, people was okay. I don't know how they do it
Yeah.
now. But at one point in time, you know, I had patients asking me to write them letters so they didn't go back to work because they was like, I was making more on the unemployment than I do when I was working. So I don't know what the unemployment rate is now. But anyway, it really it's staying in the present and being grateful because once you start to live in the past and once you start to not be grateful or just negative and down, that's where you're going down that road of depression or, you know, just
Yeah.
sad, depressed mood. And it's easy to, you know, woulda, coulda, shoulda, wish, you know, I wish did happen or I wish this, but we have to stay in the present.
How much time do you think you should give to someone? And sorry that I'm kind of I
No,
want to
you're
like,
perfectly fine.
okay. How much time should you give? Because I get that because I hear you saying like don't live in the past, and then I'm also thinking about even like with people and like singles and all that kind of that stuff to that conversation. Like don't live in the future either. Like be present. So, but how much time do you think for somebody who has experienced these losses, like the loss of your idea, the loss of your dream of what the way you thought it was? What's the grieving time that you think is appropriate for someone? Because I don't want to just be like, oh, you shouldn't have the feelings because yes, you feel disappointed, but when is like, okay, at this point, you're going to teeter and totter into going towards depression
Well,
versus
the grieving process is as long as you need.
okay.
Some people grieve for a year, some people grieve for 5 years, some people grieve for 1 week.
So like over the concept of like not going to prom or you know what I mean, like so like stuff like
So
that, like I'm kind of talking about
that
the COVID things, not the loss of a loved one.
so that one, pretty much, I it I just kept having to remind them, especially of the things, well, you did get to finish this year.
Mhm.
You didn't have to
Okay.
go back to, they didn't just say, well, you got to come back and do a whole nother semester next year. And then when they added the graduation back, well, there is going to be a graduation, then you are going to be able to invite 3 people. So here again is just finding the positive. A lot of
And the
times,
gratefulness, the
uh,
gratitude.
yeah, we don't find it. We just sit and complain over it.
Yeah.
It's hard. It's hard. I catch myself. It's hard. I'm not sitting here saying it. I don't ever do it. It
Mhm.
is hard, but you literally have to just stop yourself and make yourself stay in the present and be grateful and find a positive. And and it could be that just think people died. You didn't die.
Yeah.
Right.
You didn't get it, or if you got it, you got well, or it's just you whatever fits the situation. You have to find something positive because, or something to be grateful because that's what you have to find something to hold on to, and you gonna hold
Yeah.
on to something positive, or you gonna hold on to something negative.
Yeah, I think that's good. I just wanted to. I'm always thinking about the receiver and the viewers and like, okay, they're
Oh,
like the tangible and taking that. So, because like, okay, if somebody died, then that looks one way. But then like the loss of the way you thought it should go or loss like that can feel different, but it's still something that I think is important enough to acknowledge it. But when we have to be like develop a strategy so that you don't go into these negative, dark places. And it is super hard. And I'm still actively doing that from some loss I had in 2019 and 2018. And so, cause loss is still a loss,
Right.
but we want to make sure that we are being proactive in the way that you are navigating that. And so I just really want, especially as we're in the holiday season now. And so when I was in the store earlier, I was like, American capitalism, like it like makes my like roll my eyes. Like, so many people have lost so much, but I don't even know why I brought that up just then because it just annoys me, but go ahead.
But a loss is a loss, and it still even goes back to that. Some people might be still depressed about their you know prom or graduation or not getting married. And grief I mean, for whatever it is, because the loss is a loss, it has no time limit. It's all
Mm,
individualized. And
yeah.
so it's however that person, what they need. But the first thing, you know what, a lot of times keep us in grief so long is because we don't deal with it. We just, you know, keep pushing back in our head. It comes up, push it back, push it back. I mean, like I'm talking about deal with it in positive, like coping skills, like
Yeah.
actually dealing with it, processing it, and dealing with it. So a lot of times the grief process is long because we don't want to think about it and we keep
Right.
suppressing it, but it always, triggers something, reminds us,
Mm-hmm.
we
Oh,
keep
because denial is a part of the grief process, right?
yeah, and so
Oh,
you
we
just
just stay in that place for a
stay
long
in
time.
that place for a long time. So, and a loss is a loss. It doesn't matter, or if it's you, a child loses their doll versus someone losing a loved one. To that child, that doll, they lost their doll. This is their favorite doll, and the parents. I had a situation like that. And the parents is like, "It's just a doll. I get them another doll," but that's not the perception to the child.
Yeah.
That's
That was their favorite doll. We
Yeah.
don't want another doll. I want that doll. And so, it's all individualized per se on timeline. So I never put a time on grief.
so
I
that's
always
Yeah.
say,
another.
let's see where you at and let's see. I look at how can I help you get through the process.
Mm,
Hmm. So that's another aspect of healing that we need to recognize, that when we talk about giving ourselves permission to heal, giving ourselves permission to take the time that we need to heal, the time that we need to grieve, work through some of the stages. Um, and so that's something I think that you really shed light on, that is a great takeaway, because oftentimes people are pushed to, you need to get over it. Okay, it's
It's
been
been
a
a
year
year.
now.
Yeah.
It's been 5 years now.
Hmm.
I knew of this wonderful couple. They had been married for many, many years, longer than I've been living. And both of them have since passed. But I remember her calling me and saying, everybody is telling me you're not over that yet. He's been dead for 5 years. And I couldn't wrap my mind around how people, they had been married longer than I was living. So they
Hmm.
had been so joined together. I couldn't wrap my mind why people couldn't understand her grief. I just couldn't wrap my mind around it. But and my response to her was, take as much time as you need. A lot of the people that are talking, you've been married longer than they've been living.
And that's what makes people shut down and not talk about it and not process it because they're, shame. They don't want to hear people tell them that. They are ashamed, they, for whatever reason. So, we society, we kind of do when we put those time limits and restrictions, it makes people feel that they are not normal or they're not doing good
yeah.
because it's been 5 years or,
Mhm.
it's been past this time and everyone says that I should. So what's wrong with me?
Yeah.
Why, you know, and so we start to think something's wrong, and then that leads on down the road to other things of feeling down and depressed and
Mhm.
the self-talk. But it just, you start to judge yourself off society's
Mhm.
expectations.
I think that's, I want to, because now I'm going to circle this back to, so I wouldn't sound so crazy about the capitalism in America that I said, that statement. That you just put words to what I've truly been feeling when I see this. It's like, it's been such a year of like the thing, like being aware of what truly matters. And it's like all of a sudden we're brushed past all the negativity, all the like hurt, not just the negativity, but like we're not celebrating the doctors like we were. We're not celebrating like the first responders and all of those things. But now, oh, everybody, influencers, the store, everybody's pushing their 50% off, their 40% off, buy, buy, buy. They're telling everybody buy. And I'm like, but have we're still selling to the same people that we just, or whether we're fighting to the government to provide stimulus checks for, you know what I mean? And I think just that type of, and I get it, capitalism, all of that, but like I think that mindset that it has to go fast is like, that's why I think that comes in that middle place of feeling like, well, maybe I shouldn't be still feeling this way, or because the world has moved on, like everybody's telling me I should buy stuff now. You know what I mean?
And you're exactly right, because we're like, oh, the numbers is going up. You got one the somebody saying, oh, you need to stay at home, don't travel. But then Black Friday, some of the stores are packed.
I was so confused.
So
I
it's
had to
like,
be out.
what are we
I had to go
doing?
through. I was like, why are these people out here? I'm like,
And I'm one that's normally out. I did not go out this year, but I couldn't, it's like a double, like you say, okay, it's okay today or it's okay right now, but oh, but we need to make money. So come on, it's okay to shop and come out, but tomorrow we'll be saying
And
only
then the
10
very
people in the
next
store.
day, they
Yeah, they
announced
only allow.
the Cyber
Mhm,
Monday today,
mhm,
they announced that to hunker down for the next 6 weeks.
right. So it's very confusing and the inconsistency. And I think that's what creates so much of this turmoil too. And because you have like some places you can go in and sit down and eat, some places still not letting you eat. I mean,
Right.
doing so many different things. It's like,
mm.
where are we at?
And that type of inconsistency is mental as well. Like it can
It
really
is.
play
It
with
is.
your psyche. And I
We
don't think
said
that
that
people
earlier.
understand that type of um that is, it messes with me. Like I'm okay with acknowledging that here, but like acknowledging that, like even people, I'm like, this time messes with my mental just from like the fact that no state, like none of our states, or like we haven't handled it as a nation. That to me messes with my psyche, that there is something going on globally, but everybody individually is doing, which is one of the reasons I choose to stay more closely at home, because each state is doing something different. So there's not even inconsistency there. So that promotes more like uncertainty, and I don't know. So I'm saying that so that somebody who's watching can think about just some of the things that you may be feeling that you don't even know that you're feeling,
Right.
but we feel like we're a part of this ecosystem. So like we feel all of it, whether we want to acknowledge. For people who are like, well, I'm not political and I'm not this. It's like, well, you still feel it, whether you know it or not. You're feeling it, and because we're living in it.
Let me bring up something else that was a big factor with COVID. I'm seeing a lot of more kids for anxiety because we tell parents and everything to stay home, but then it's like we send our kids to school, and some of the
That is the
parents,
most confusing thing to me.
yes,
And that
and so these
plays
kids are
with
like,
children's
y'all
psyche.
are staying right, and so these kids are telling me, well, why do I have to go to school? And they're saying, don't go to the stores and don't go to this, and now they're scared they're going to get COVID and die. But it's a mixed message. But I don't want to get too far into that.
Right, right, yeah,
I had a problem with that. It's like we're
yeah.
sending kids to school, but we're steady saying the numbers are going up. Stay 6 feet apart. Don't do this. Don't do that. But we sent our babies,
Well, yeah. They
and
did that today. They opened the largest school district in New York today. And I'm like, what? The
but
numbers are going up. So confused.
another flip side is that some people can't teach at home for different reasons.
Mhm.
Um, you know, they have problems reading and writing. They don't understand it. They have to work, so the kids are at home by themselves. So they won't. The kids not going to do what they're supposed to do. So that's another aspect of the parents are. I want my child to stay at home, but I can't keep them at home for A, B, C, D.
Mhm.
So it's a lot, and it affects everybody.
Yeah.
It does. It does.
So it's sad.
There's so many dynamics and layers to that. Because
Hmm.
some children need to go to school, really, let's be honest, to eat, to have peace, to not get molested. Let's just be honest. So there's so many dynamics. And then one person that I was, or a couple of people rather, that I was talking to, um, they need that social skill.
Right.
Um, I don't know. My husband and I have talked about this before. If I had to make that decision this year, it probably would have been a no for me. And I would have had to just deal with the chips as they fall. as they
So
would have fallen.
so
So
I have some parents that did that and their child is acting crazy
mhm,
because they're mad because they can't go to school, they can't see their friends. So they're just refusing to do their work. They're just
mhm,
acting out because
Yeah.
they want to do things that's going to make them their mom or parents give in to letting them go to
yeah,
school because
so many
they
layers
think
to that.
okay,
Yeah,
it is a lot of layers. But yeah, so that's when I say it's so many different aspects of COVID and depression and anxiety.
Yeah.
yeah. We have certainly had an awesome discussion today. I feel so grateful that you would stop by and share your professional opinion with us and your expertise. We certainly have learned a lot. I also appreciate Miss Deborah Quave. So
Yeah,
Ramona
yeah.
and Deborah, I cannot thank you enough for stopping by the oil. Um, Before we go, we always leave with blowing a kiss because the all is about overflowing in love. So we are just going to send a kiss to everybody and say good night. And thank you for joining us. And please replay, share, give this information some consideration. It could save someone close to you and you can identify signs and you can also provide resources. Before you go, Dr. Ramona, can you give us any information, nurse practitioner Ramona, can you give us any information about how to reach you, your website, your number, all of the things that you do? I do know that you do a lot with you emphasize mental health, not only with marriages, but you do a lot of outreach with young people. Can you share some information about that as well?
Yes. So my day job, my 8 to 2 job, government job, I am a psychiatric mental health nurse practitioner. I work at Senior River Services in Goshen. I also have a nonprofit called RG Mindful Health for our youth. It's located in Gulfport. I live in Gulfport. We're going to open back up in February because I have so many parents asking me to open back up. But that's where I mentor youth, and it's free. The parents just have to provide a ride for them to get there and pick them up. And I'll send you that information, Katrina, because it's a long name. RG Mindful Health for our youth, and the spelling is a little different. But that is a nonprofit. I think when I open back up, I'm going to do Tuesdays and Thursdays, um, 5:30 to 6:45. I also just started doing life coach, like, and I talk about everything. That's another company called Nanooks, and so I, you know, do one-on-one, group, kids, family, all of that. I'm also a published author. I have a book that just came out. Yes, the first one. It is geared toward kids because that is my purpose and passion. It's helping kids to realize that it doesn't matter what environment they're in. You know, that doesn't mean that that's how they're going to be. Because I believe a lot of times our kids are so discouraged from what they grow up and what they see to not thinking that they can get out of that or they can do better. And, I can't share my story here because it's too long, but, I'm absolutely not a product of my environment. So that's the reason why I push to catch these kids when they're young before they get out of before they get out of high school to encourage them, and I know we see it and you hear it, oh, we had a black president, oh, you can do it, but it's still different. They hear that, but they really don't process it, internalize that, because that's another thing that we have desensitized and we say it's kind of like a cliche.
Mm-hmm.
Oh, we had a black president, you can be anything you want to be. But if you really talk to these kids, they really don't believe that truly.
Yeah.
So my nonprofit, I get to talk to and mentor them one-on-one. Now the book is geared toward, it's called Greater Than My Mood. It's an interactive workbook, and the first one it's a series of 5. The first one is already out, and that's on bullying, self-control, and anger management. So those I did for, especially like now, COVID, another thing, doing a lot of virtual stuff. be it appointments, be it everything stuff. They're developing more programs and stuff to do virtual. So this workbook is interactive. They can write in it, but it's something for the kids. The parents might not be able to get them to therapy, or the kids might not want to go to therapy, but they can read this book and get the same things that they would get if they were in therapy. So it's a good tool for the kids just to have, and they can reread it over and over and pick out certain things. I know that was kind of a lot, but Katrina, I'll get you all of those in detail because I have a lot of hats.
That's
But
amazing. That's a lot of resources that we need, especially during this time. And of course, afterwards, it's something that we need to, like Dee Dee always said, can I get something tangible, something that I can take away? And you surely have provided some takeaways through not just with this conversation, but also with the books and everything. Um, can I share this with the audience?
I
The
don't know, what
creative
is it?
side of you?
Oh yeah, you can. I forgot about that. See?
She is an amazing, amazing jewelry maker. Uh,
Oh,
yes. Uh,
So let me tell you, I started it as a way to make money. It's like beaded jewelry. And then I found it to be so therapeutic. Like I
hmm.
would get so caught up into these colors and making it work. So I started when I would get upset, anxious, or whatever. I need to make some beads because I found it to be very calm. So I have like, yes, I do beaded jewelry. So really, and I sell it to offset my. It goes to my nonprofit.
Oh, cool.
Money that I make on the jewelry, it goes to my nonprofit because I provide snacks and materials, paper and stuff. So yeah. So and
Amazing.
awesome.
therapists, counselors, and anything. My nonprofit also do volunteers. I know I have people always looking for hours for their school, different types of schools. So I am 501c3 certified. So if someone is looking for hours or just want to volunteer and get back to the community, they can let me know also on that RG Mindful Health website. And when I open back up, we can, you know, get some volunteers and
Writing.
take
Thank
the
you.
village.
Thank you so much. And this time we have wrapped up the oil. We certainly appreciate you for joining us. Goodbye and good night.
Thanks for having me. Bye, Deborah. Nice to meet you.
Nice to meet you as well.
Okay.